your home, they can save you money too. As energy costs keep climbing, put your energy bills in check. Call today and find out how affordable ABC Seamless products can be.
This is CNN.
The nation's growing unemployment lines prompt the White House to consider a new line on unemployment benefits.
Magic Johnson's presence on the U.S. Olympic team could mean some Australians' absence from the basketball court. Welcome to NewsHour. From Washington, I'm Reid Collins.
And I'm Bobbie Battista from CNN Center in Atlanta. The fear of AIDS could tarnish the quest for the gold at this year's Summer Olympics. If Magic Johnson plays for the U.S. basketball team, Australia says it might walk out. Johnson retired from the LA Lakers last year after testing positive for the virus that causes AIDS, but the basketball great says he would still like to play for the U.S. team in Barcelona this summer. The senior medical director of the Australian Olympic basketball team says Johnson could pass on the AIDS virus. And a center on the Australian team says if given a choice of playing for the gold or forfeiting and taking a silver medal, he would settle for the silver. Australia is considered a top contender for a medal. But in an interview with CNN affiliate KCAL, the team doctor admitted the risk of getting AIDS on the court is slight.
We would not compel one of our players to play in a team in which an HIV-infected person was known to be participating. Now, we would let the players themselves decide if they felt that constituted too great a risk to allow them to play. We do know that from time to time there is a wound occurs during basketball and there may be a little bit of blood around, but we know that it's not truly a body contact sport and that lacerations are pretty uncommon in matches.
The Australian Olympic Committee is backing off talk of a boycott. Australian Olympic officials say the team physician is not speaking on behalf of the Olympic Committee.
Japan's Sumitomo Corporation says it's been the victim of Japan bashing. That's the reaction after the Los Angeles County Transportation Commission put the brakes on a $122 million contract with that Japanese company. The commission voted to cancel the pact to build some metro rail cars yesterday after angry residents had complained that an American company ought to get the deal. The message to buy American was heard loud and clear.
There's 130 jobs available for every 100 people in Japan. We can't say that here. We are really hurting.
It is a line drawn in the sand where we say, we're not going to sit idly by anymore as we watch our taxes and our jobs go somewhere else.
Political officials, when they spend taxpayers' money, they need to think how they can reinvest in their own society. Other countries around the world do that all the time. For them, it is standard operating procedure, and it has to start being that for us here as well.
And bidding on that contract will not be reopened until a subcommittee reports on proposals. Buy American is a message resounding across the United States. A nationwide survey by the Detroit Free Press indicates 51% of those asked say the next car they buy is going to be American-made. 4% said they would buy only an import. And 44% said that they would consider both American and Japanese-built cars. The survey of 607 Americans has a margin for error of plus or minus 4%.
Honda Motor Company is recalling about 70,000 new cars worldwide to check for possible oil leaks. Honda says a defective part could cause oil from the engine to leak and burn. It says it received 10 reports of oil leaks, all in Japan, but none resulted in accidents or injuries. The affected models are the 1992 Honda Accord, Civic, and Prelude, plus the 1992 Acura Integra and Legend. Honda says owners outside Japan are being notified by letter. Meanwhile, the Japanese parliament is awaiting delivery of 2 new Buicks. After agreeing to prod Japanese consumers to buy American, the politicians say they are leading by example.
Well, the Bush administration has been working, of course, to get Tokyo to open its markets to more U.S. products. The goal, then, to get America's unemployed back to work. Labor Department says that 46,000 more Americans filed new claims for jobless benefits during the week that ended January 11th. The Washington Post reports today that Mr. Bush may extend the long-term unemployment benefits again. He did that in November after a lot of negotiation. Within this past hour, he was asked about that.
What I did was stand for a program that would alleviate the suffering and would get the checks to individuals, but did it inside the budget agreement. So it wasn't a conversion. It was fighting for what was right, the taxpayer as well as those that were hurting, and we prevailed. We prevailed in both instances. But you stay tuned for the next chapter. It'll be coming out.
The State of the Union address is scheduled for Tuesday night. Congressional Democrats are saying that those high unemployment numbers mean jobless benefits should be extended again, but Democrats and Republicans are in disagreement over how to pay for the extra coverage. Today in Washington, Democrats were saying the president should declare an emergency, then let the government borrow the money.
The president has acknowledged that many American workers are hurting. I wish he could be here today to hear from those who have come to tell their stories. They too want jobs, 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 but until those jobs are forthcoming, they want an extension of benefits so that they and their families can survive.
The time for negotiations on this issue has passed. This is an emergency, and the president should recognize it as such.
The House panel's been considering a measure to provide an extra 13 weeks of payment for those people who have used up their normal coverage. Republicans say they'd like to extend those benefits, but without driving up the federal budget deficit.
Time was the U.S. Navy's nuclear force was off limits when it came to weapons reduction, but that is about to change, according to a flurry of reports citing sources within the Bush administration. One candidate for cuts is the Navy's fleet of missile-firing Trident subs. Overall, the reported U.S. initiative would scrap 20% of the long-range missiles not covered by arms agreements with the former Soviet Union.
Warnings today, the United States should be careful about how it scales back military spending or risk plunging the country into more economic decline. Democratic Congressman Sam Gadenson today said defense industries and their workers often are the most efficient and modern.
These, in many instances, are the best trained workers in the country. Their skills and standards of work they do are among the best in the world. And to let that technology just dissipate, those workers just go off, is squandering America's future. At the end of World War II, we used the technological advances we made to move this economy forward. We have an opportunity to do that now, but we can't do it without the government and the federal government playing a significant role.
Gadenson was commenting on the release of a new report on the so-called peacetime economy, released by an independent research organization called the Council on Economic Priorities. That group warns that among areas hardest hit by defense cutting would be St. Louis, Phoenix, Long Island, New York, Dallas, Fort Worth, Philadelphia, and Orange County, California. The international conference focusing on how best to get aid to the former Soviet Union is wrapping up today in Washington. Delegates from 47 countries attended the conference. Germany is the biggest single contributor so far, having given the former Soviet Union nearly $45 billion. CNN's Ralph Begleiter spoke with Germany's Foreign Minister, Hans-Dietrich Genscher, this morning about that aid matter.
Our help should not only focus on emergency help for humanitarian reasons, should not only be focused on financial help. It's very important that we start the program to educate and to train those people who in the future should play an important role in running a new market economy.
European Community estimates more than $78 billion in aid has gone to that new Commonwealth of Independent States.
Among the stories coming up on NewsHour, a day of sledding for the Discovery astronauts and a night of shuttle gazing down below. We'll tell you where on Earth Discovery can be seen. Scoring a bullseye or missing the mark, a report card on whether a new California law is having an impact on guns winding up in the wrong hands. And we'll see how sensational headlines of the past are now being recycled into the fashion statement of today.
State finals coming up. A lot of pressure to win. I don't eat right, I get irregular, so I don't project a winning attitude, and the boys see that. I tried some natural bulk fiber, but I couldn't take all that grit. Then I discovered Sunrise Smooth Metamucil. No grit in the mix or the taste. Easy to get the extra fiber I need every day to stay regular. You got a winning attitude, you win, if you're lucky.
Metamucil, and you could stay regular for the rest of your life.
Your attention, please. The 631 will be delayed.
Get some coffee?
No. This gives me a chance to call my broker.
Now?
Sure.
My broker's never in this early.
You have to keep to his schedule?
Trading decisions happen round the clock. That's why so many active investors choose Fidelity Brokerage Services. Fidelity has experienced brokers available 24 hours a day to place your trades. Plus, you'll save as much as 76% on stock and option commissions. Call this number now for your free Fidelity Brokerage Fact Kit.
That's right, 500 shares at the market price at the open. Great. A couple more things I want to cover.
And find out about Fidelity's fast on-time performance nationwide with significant savings. For your free fact kit, call Fidelity Brokerage Services at 1-800-624-4900, a Fidelity Investments company.
pH-balanced Woolite cares for the clothes you care about by protecting them while cleaning them. So keep your favorite clothes looking great. Trust Woolite in the gentle cycle.
Are you finding it harder and harder to get home in time to watch the evening news?
And that's the news. Good night.
What's the rush? Headline News gives you the latest news, business, and sports around the clock.
Discovery's 7 astronauts are now 1 day into what they call their 7 days of science in space. Discovery has settled into a 187-mile-high orbit around the Earth. And tonight, many of us will be able to spot the spaceship moving across the sky. CNN's John Holliman joins us now with more. John.
Bobbie, I'll tell you, this mission has turned out to be an interesting one for us to watch on television here in Atlanta, and for our viewers when we can occasionally bring you little updates on what's going on. Let's see what's going on right now in the Space Lab capsule. You can see in the foreground of your TV screen some pictures of some experimental racks that are there. The Discovery astronauts are doing experiments involving plant growth, involving growth of protein crystals, and all of those experiments, or many of them at least, are going on right up toward the foreground of the screen. Payload specialist Roberta Bonder from Canada is working in one of the experimental boxes right now. Just a couple of minutes ago, she was working with some oat seedlings and some wheat seedlings, which sprouted several days ago on Earth and are now growing in the near weightless environment of space in an effort to see what's going to happen to plants if they are planted on long-duration space missions. The crew has been very busy doing some tests on themselves today as well. Mission specialist Norm Taggart joined the other astronauts a few minutes ago in testing how well his body has adapted to space. You see him there on the slide going back and forth. 1 day into this mission, they're getting to do a few things that are pretty interesting to us down here below. The crew also has had to point a light beam at a target, which looks sort of like a bed sheet put up inside the shuttle, but they have to do it blindfolded and wearing earplugs. The idea is to get as close to a fixed point as possible. In the past, the astronauts have developed illusions, nausea, and failure to sense where their limbs are positioned. NASA hopes to find a way to overcome these problems by experiments like the one you're looking at right now. Ulf Merbold, the German physicist, became a farmer today, planting some oat seeds, which will germinate in space over the next couple of days. Scientists want to know how they'll grow, as we said, without gravity to tell the plants which end is up. The shuttle's orbit will bring it back across much of the United States a little bit later today, and it'll be visible to people in a wide band of the United States a little bit later on this evening. The best time to watch is between 5 o'clock local time and about 6:30. If you live anywhere in that light band on your screen right now, and you look up and there are not too many clouds, you'll see the shuttle moving from northwest to southeast, looking very much like a shooting star. It'll be up in the sky, either close to the horizon or directly overhead, for a period of about 1 minute to as much as 4 minutes, if you're right in the middle of that band of light that you see there. And the folks at NASA certainly want you to be able to see that tonight as it goes over, because after all, if you live in the United States, you're spending $1 billion on these missions. Reid?
John, the city of Dallas once again is saying no to homosexual police officers. Dallas City Council voted early today to uphold a police department ban on the hiring of such gay officers. The council says the ban is appropriate because Texas law does prohibit sodomy, but the law is up for review next week. In California, thousands of potential gun owners were denied firearms last year because of a beefed-up 15-day waiting period. Supporters of this measure say the law is saving lives. But as CNN's Robert Vito reports, the National Rifle Association is saying something else.
Television pictures are a grim reminder of our violent society as the slaughter continues across the country.
Well, this year, 33 to 35,000 people are going to be killed with a gun. That's suicides, accidents, and homicides.
And as the death toll rises nationwide, the debate continues over what should be done. But a new California law, which takes guns out of the hands of criminals, has officials encouraged that this law is saving lives.
This year, California stopped almost 6,000 convicted criminals and mentally ill people from buying weapons.
Under the newly expanded law, the first of its type in the nation, would-be gun buyers must wait 15 days before they can purchase a handgun, rifle, or shotgun. The legislation allows the state time to conduct a background check to determine if they have a criminal record. Backers of the plan, including some people out shopping for a gun, think the law scored a bullseye.
If it takes 15 days, fine. If it takes a month, if it takes a day. The point is, get the information back. Don't let the crazies, don't let the violent criminals have weapons.
But there's another side to this story. The National Rifle Association says the statistics are meaningless unless they're tied directly to a reduction in crime. And gun-related crimes in the state, according to the NRA, have not gone down. A gun store owner sides with the NRA.
I think the politicians are waving flags and making a lot of noise, but it hasn't done anything to control crime.
Still, others believe it's just a waste of time.
I also know that the bad guys that want to go out and get a weapon, they're going to get their weapon anyway.
But the California law does have its drawbacks, since criminals can go to other states like Arizona and Nevada and buy their weapons without a background check.
What we need to make sure, though, is California is not an island. And as long as criminals can go to other states and buy these weapons, we're not going to be as safe as we should be. We need a national law. But California is doing its part.
While a number of different bills are being considered on Capitol Hill, the maximum waiting period suggested is only 7 days, and none require background checks by law enforcement agencies. Robert Vito, CNN, Los Angeles.
Still ahead on NewsHour, a look at the growing competition for organs to be used in transplants and why some call the process unfair.
Have you had your V8 today? Did you know that V8 juice has less than half the calories of that apple?
Wow!
Did you know that V8 has more vitamins A and C than that tossed salad?
Wow!
And did you know that V8 is 100% vegetable juice, so it has no fat, unlike that low-fat yogurt?
Wow!
So how do you feel now that you know these things?
Wow! I gotta have a V8.
V8 is a nutritious blend of 8 vegetable juices that taste terrific. Have you had your V8 today?
Fortunately, my heart attack wasn't the end of the world. It was kind of a beginning. To help prevent a second attack, my doctor prescribed exercise, eating right, and Therapy Bear Enteric aspirin. Enteric means it's safety-coated to help protect your stomach, because it doesn't dissolve in your stomach. I asked my doctor if this regimen with Therapy Bear Enteric would really make a difference down the road. That's why I'm doing it myself, he said.
Therapy Bear Enteric aspirin. Take it from your doctor.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered the 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
Today, drugs in the schools, drive-by shootings, gangs, the fears and challenges of everyday life. How does urban violence affect children? Today on Sonia Live, 1 Eastern, 10 Pacific on CNN.
The success of organ transplants in saving lives has led to more medical centers offering the surgery. Now each year the need for organs outpaces the supply. With this keen competition for donor organs, some experts complain the distribution process is unfair. CNN medical correspondent Dan Rutz reports.
Every year, transplant surgeons get better at what they do, saving the lives of people whose own organs can no longer sustain them. But these days, patients are waiting longer, becoming a lot sicker before they get their second chance.
Waiting for the transplant is what the toughest thing.
Then the next thing is scratching and itching.
Advanced liver disease prolongs suffering and threatens life. More organ transplants take place at the University of Pittsburgh than anywhere else in the world. On a typical day, 2 people receive either a kidney, liver, heart, or lung.
He was referred to us for consideration for TIPS and or transplant.
The transplant team fills an auditorium, planning care for the hundreds of patients referred to them. But they performed fewer transplants last year. The organs just aren't there.
The rule of thumb is that you have to be so damn sick that here to get a liver that you're really very close to the end of the line.
The school's chief of transplant surgery is frustrated by rule changes that affect how transplantable organs are distributed nationwide. The United Network for Organ Sharing, UNOS, has always allowed transplant centers first priority for organs that become available in their areas. Unused organs next went to the national network. But last year, the rules changed, adding another hurdle. Now, in most cases, regional centers can divert organs for their own use. That's tough for patients who choose experience centers like Pittsburgh and who are apt to be sickest. 96% of the patients come from outside. The community can provide just 15% of the needed livers.
The list of patients waiting should be just a list of patients, not a list of centers. It should be a list of patients. So when a liver becomes available for national use, every patient would start out with an equal chance of being offered that liver.
Dr. Sherman Cooper, a member of the UNOS board, admits the system has a split allegiance. New transplant centers demand and get their share of organs, even if there is more urgent need elsewhere.
It's not the best for every program, and it's not the best for every individual.
6 years after getting his new heart, Bill Brownlick of Transplant Recipients International sums it up.
Your chances of survival and the medicines used now are much better than they were then. But I think your chances of getting an organ in time are not as good now.
Dan Rutz, CNN, Pittsburgh.
And just ahead on NewsHour, organized crime, how it survives as the government takes new aim. We continue our series of reports on the mob.
Before you really buy something, you should thoroughly investigate it. I took a chance this time and try to save a couple of dollars.
I found that the service wasn't there. So I went to AT&T and stayed with AT&T.
I don't want gimmicks. I want a long-distance phone company I can count on.
If you miss dealing with the long-distance company you can depend on, it's easy to come back to AT&T. Call 1-800-547-9995 and we'll switch you for free.
And I've tried every long-distance phone company that's out there.
After a few months, I said, forget it. I'm giving up on this. And I wanted to switch back to AT&T.
And I mean, I really feel that AT&T gives me the best service for what I want.
People who've seen what's out there are coming back for the service they deserve. Call AT&T right now, and we'll have you back in no time.
And the reason we switched initially was because of the, we're going to see this dramatic drop in our phone bill, and we didn't.
I mean, what's the point? They can't offer me substantially cheaper rates from what I've seen.
At AT&T, when we promise you savings, you get them. In fact, nobody gives you more ways to save. Come back now for free.
And it was just like a hassle figuring out both bills, both sets, and so we just said, hey, we just scrapped it and just now we get one phone bill and that's it. It's a lot easier to pay.
I think the reason I've stayed with AT&T is because it's always been easy.
AT&T makes everything easy, even switching back. Call now.
If I'm going to call my sister up in Canada, I want to hear, her voice, and if she sighs, I want to hear it. So I use AT&T.
I really like AT&T.
1-800-547-9995. The service and quality only AT&T guarantees. Right now, we'll switch you for free. What a great time to come back.
The judge in the trial of the reputed New York mob boss John Gotti has sequestered the jury now because of alleged jury tampering in some early Gotti trials. The current trial is expected to last up to 3 months. Gotti is the latest alleged mafia figure to face trial on charges of racketeering. Since the mid-1980s, the mafia has been under increased attack by federal authorities. And as we continue our series on organized crime, CNN's Charles Feldman looks at how the fight is going.
In the war against organized crime, is the mob on the run?
They haven't wiped out the mob. Law enforcement hasn't wiped out the mob, and it's not the twilight of the dons. That being said, I think it has to be recognized that organized crime, as a consequence of all of these prosecutions that we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, is or has been seriously damaged.
In fact, since 1981, 20 mafia bosses from 16 different families have been convicted. And the FBI says that in the near future, it may strike a blow to the mob's vital financial underbelly.
I believe right now we're right on the edge of identifying certain Cosa Nostra members who have always kept a very low profile in their families and have been involved in making millions and millions of dollars in money or handling the money for the various families. And they've been forced to take over positions of importance in the family. And when we take them out, we're going to be hitting the families very hard on their financial assets.
For most of the early part of this century, the government had very little luck battling organized crime. Its luck changed when Congress in 1969 passed a law with the long name of Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act and the short nickname RICO.
What RICO does is it targets not just an individual act of criminality, but an enterprise or a group that's engaged in multiple acts of racketeering. And those acts can be homicide, mail fraud, securities fraud, trafficking in stolen property.
Armed with RICO, prosecutors in the mid-1980s went to court and proved both the existence of a national ruling commission of the mafia and a heroin trade link between the Sicilian mafia and its U.S. counterpart, La Cosa Nostra, a link that used pizza parlors in the United States to help process the drug. While RICO has been embraced by prosecutors, some defense lawyers say it should be abolished.
I think it's something to be feared. What it does is reduce the prosecutor's burden to really prove somebody guilty, and it allows them to put together a tremendous amount of evidence which may or may not be related, and by the weight of that evidence, press the defendant down and convict him.
One of the government's biggest victories so far against organized crime has been its success, at least to a degree, in freeing the Teamsters Union from what the government claimed was the iron grip of the mafia. The union's last election was actually supervised by the government, and the union's new president is said to be one of the first untainted by ties to the mob. This was accomplished by a court settlement brought about by RICO.
I think what's going on with the Teamsters now is a tremendous example of how we can combine use of prison sentences and use of civil racketeering trusteeships to really begin to free a powerful labor institution from what was decades of control by mafia figures.
In what seems like a paradox, authorities say this bloodshed in Brooklyn, the result of the mob war, is actually a sign that the mafia is seriously weakened. With so many senior bosses off the streets and behind bars, lower-level soldiers are shooting it out for control of at least one mob empire. While the mafia may be wounded, the government says it is forming new alliances with so-called emerging organized crime groups from South America and even from the former Soviet Union. These dangerous liaisons mean that while the American La Cosa Nostra may be down, don't yet count it out. Charles Feldman, CNN, New York.
Just ahead on NewsHour, a check on the markets live from Wall Street and how New Hampshire may benefit from pork barrel politics and new jobs this campaign season.
Your attention, please. The 631 will be delayed.
Get some coffee?
No. This gives me a chance to call my broker.
Now?
Sure.
My broker's never in this early.
You have to keep to his schedule?
Trading decisions happen round the clock. That's why so many active investors choose Fidelity brokerage services. Fidelity has experienced brokers available 24 hours a day to place your trades. Plus, you'll save as much as 76% on stock and option commissions. Call this number now for your free Fidelity brokerage fact kit.
That's right, 500 shares at the market price at the open. Great. A couple more things I want to cover.
And find out about Fidelity's fast on-time performance nationwide with significant savings. For your free fact kit, call Fidelity Brokerage Services at 1-800-624-4900. A Fidelity Investments Company.